Welcome to part 3 of my build of the quarter-scale Taylorcraft Auster 5A based on the Jerry Bates Auster J1 Autocrat plans. This video is a slideshow with a voiceover of some pictures I took while building it. Day 15. Today I measured and checked the horizontal stabilizer on the back of the fuselage, and when everything looked right, I used a good amount of glue and stuck it, the center actually, onto the fuse. The tube visible on the front of the fuse was used to check the horizontal placement of the tail, and the ruler visible on the photo was used to measure from the wing seat to the end of the tail. Here the glue has dried and I could remove the tail panels and sand down the center to the fuselage sides. And when the tail goes back on, there will be a gap for the covering to go through, as we see on planes of this kind. And now I could not resist putting the whole tail on and seeing what the model looks like. Day 16. I decided to make a start on the wings. The first task was to make 11 leading edge riblets for each wing. These are not included in the short kit and not shown on the plans. The prototype I'm doing does have these, as can be seen on photographs and 3 views, so I had to fabricate them. Next I had to extend the 6x6mm wing spars. The ones I got were 914mm or thereabouts, but they need to be at least 1200mm. There are 4 to each wing. I cut the upper trailing edge and the flaps from 1.5mm plywood. I might make the lower trailing edge from balsa, but I have enough plywood to make them, as they are only about 10mm wide since I'm making flaps. Then I removed from 5 ribs the parts needed to make way for the flaps. The ribs are made from light ply and are very easy to cut using a sharp knife. Now I can start fitting the ribs in the right places. Day 17. And so I start gluing the ribs to the lower spars. Everything seemed to fit perfectly. But then I reached the aileron cutout. Things became complicated. The aileron spar, made of 3mm light ply, and the ribs in front of it did not fit together. After a lot of thinking and figuring, I had almost decided to make new ribs when I reached the conclusion that the spar was wrong. The notches in it should not be from the bottom up, but from the top down, and what had been cut out should have been the part left below the notches. I cut a new spar from scrap light ply, and now the ribs fit into the spar as intended. Now I could glue the rest of the ribs to the lower spars and the aileron spar. The leading edge spar has also been joined and will be glued to the wing tomorrow. Day 18. I closed the wing and added strength just in front of the opening for the split flap. For this I used 5mm balsa. I added riblets between the leading edge spar and the main wing spar. The plans tell me to close this area with 2.5mm balsa, effectively making a D-box, but the prototype is not like that. Photos and 3 views clearly show an open structure with riblets between the main ribs, and this is the way I'm going to do it. I may possibly have to strengthen the wing because of that, and I have an idea how I might do that, but I will come to that later. I assembled the aileron. Now I just need to form it and give it a good sanding. I could not imagine where I should use these sickle shapes and just could not find them on the plans. I even asked the designer, Jerry Bates, but he could not remember them. Then I discovered it. These are the wing tips. The 10mm one on the top of the shape marked TC and the 6mm one under it. Day 19. This morning was spent putting webbing between the wing spars. This takes quite a lot of time, but is very enjoyable. I cut the webbing to the correct height and then fitted them between the ribs before gluing them with wood glue. Then I wanted to increase the strength of the spars because I'm skipping the cladding that makes up the D-box. I have some carbon fibre tow that I bought many years ago. I have no idea why I bought it, but this I put into epoxy resin on top of the front spar. I will later do the same for the underside of the front spar. Day 20. I glued cap strips on top of all the ribs. I admit it took more than one day, but lack of heat in my workshop slowed the hardening of the glue. When I could finally turn the wing around, there were things I had to do first before putting on the cap strips. Here we see the fastening and hatch for the aileron servo. And this is where the flap servo is going to sit. I might not make a hatch for it, but that means I cannot put on the covering until after the flap is in place. The control rod will not come down through the covering. Day 21. Servo trays. The tray for the aileron servo, which was laser cut according to the plans, was too small for the servo I want to use, so I made a new one from 3mm plywood. I will probably have to shave it down flush with the cap strips. Here we have the tray for the flap servo. The bearers were placed under the top cap strips and then the plywood was screwed to them. The servo will be screwed to the blocks and I will probably not put in a hatch. Servos are so reliable today that you really do not need to have access to them. Carbon tow on the lower main spar. Having done that, you do not really have access to anything else until the resin goes hard.